In a small village pressed between mountains and sky, there lived an old Zen master known simply as Toen. People said he could see grief the way others saw weather. A passing glance, a bowed head held for half a second too long, and he knew. They came to him from neighboring towns, from cities beyond the peaks, carrying burdens they could no longer name. And Toen would sit with them, silent as stone, until their hearts remembered how to speak. One evening, just as the sun slipped behind the mountains like a tired thought, a young woman arrived at his hut. Her name was Aiko. She had walked for 3 days to reach him. Her shoes were caked with mud, her clothes worn thin. But it wasn't the journey that had exhausted her. It was the years before it. She stood at the doorway for a long time before knocking. Her hand hovered in the air, trembling, as if the simple act of asking for help might shatter what little remained of her pride. When she finally knocked, the sound was so soft she wasn't sure he would hear. But the door opened almost immediately. "Master," she said, bowing so deeply her forehead nearly touched her knees. "I have come for wisdom." Toen looked at her, not at her clothes or her posture, but at something deeper, something she had been trying to hide even from herself. "Come in," he said. The hut was bare. A mat, a kettle, 2 cups, a small fire crackling in the corner. Nothing else. Aiko sat across from him, her back straight despite the weight pressing down on her shoulders, her eyes tired in a way sleep could not fix. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then, as if a dam had finally broken, the words came pouring out. "I am lost," she said, her voice cracking. "I have done everything right. I studied harder than anyone. I worked until my hands bled. I loved sincerely with my whole heart. I sacrificed everything I had, and still, my life feels empty, hollow, like I'm screaming into a void and nothing echoes back." Toen rose without answering and began to boil water. Aiko continued, as if afraid silence might swallow her whole. "I compare myself to others constantly. They seem ahead, happier, more certain of their path. I see their smiles, their success, their peace, and I feel like I'm drowning while everyone else has learned to breathe underwater." Her hands clenched into fists on her lap. "I feel like I'm running as fast as I can, but never arriving. Like there's a finish line everyone else can see, but it's invisible to me." The kettle began to whistle, soft at first, then louder. "I read books," she said. "So many books. Philosophy, self-help, ancient wisdom. I listen to teachers. I meditate every morning until my legs go numb. I pray to gods I'm not sure exist. I do all the things they say bring peace. But peace never stays. It visits like a stranger and leaves before dawn." Toen poured hot water into her cup. He kept pouring. The water reached the rim, steam rising like small ghosts. He kept pouring. It spilled over, streaming onto the floor in rivers, pooling around the edges of the mat. "Master!" Aiko cried out, reaching forward. "It's full! You're wasting it! Please stop!" Toen stopped. He set down the kettle and looked at her gently, with eyes that held both infinite sadness and infinite compassion. "You are like this cup," he said quietly. She frowned, wiping tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I don't understand." He sat back down across from her, the spilled water between them like a small sea. "You came to me full," he said. "Full of effort, full of knowledge, full of comparison, full of fear of falling behind, full of shame for not being further ahead, full of anger at yourself for not being enough." His words landed like stones in still water. "How can I give you anything," Toen continued, "when there is no room to receive?" Aiko's eyes filled with tears that finally spilled over, matching the tea on the floor. "I just want to be enough," she whispered, her voice breaking completely. "Just once. I just want to feel like I'm enough." The words hung in the air, raw and desperate. Toen nodded slowly as if he had heard this prayer 1,000 times before. So long as you are full of trying to be enough, he said, there is no space to simply be enough. The trying itself blocks the being. Silence settled between them like snow. The fire crackled. The spilled tea seeped into the wooden floor. Somewhere outside, a bird called out, a lonely sound in the gathering dark. Aiko stared at the water on the floor, watching her reflection ripple and break. "Then what should I do?" she asked, her voice small. "Tell me what to do and I'll do it. Give me a practice, a discipline, a path. I'll follow it perfectly." Toen picked up his own cup, empty, waiting. "First," he said, "empty yourself." Her shoulders sagged under an invisible weight. "I don't know how." "Then learn to not know how," he said. "Learn to sit with not knowing, to be comfortable in the emptiness." "But I've spent my whole life trying to know," she said, "trying to understand, trying to figure it out. If I stop trying, what's left?" Toen smiled, not unkindly. "That," he said, "is what you came here to discover." That night, Aiko stayed at the hut. Sleep came in fragments. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself running, endlessly running, while the horizon stayed the same distance away. Before dawn, while the world still held its breath between darkness and light, Toen woke her. "Come," was all he said. They walked into the mountains as mist clung to the pines, like old memories refusing to let go. The path was steep, rocky, unforgiving. Several times Aiko stumbled, her legs weak from years of carrying invisible burdens. Toen never looked back. He simply walked, steady and unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world. After a long climb that left Aiko gasping, they reached a cliff overlooking the valley. The world below was silent. Villages looked like scattered seeds, rivers like silver threads. The rising sun painted everything in shades of gold and rose. "Tell me," Toen said, "what do you hear?" Aiko closed her eyes and listened. "Wind," she said. "Birds beginning to wake. My own breathing. My heartbeat." "And your thoughts?" he asked. She opened her eyes, ashamed. "They're still there," she admitted. "Worrying about what I should be doing instead of standing here, judging whether I'm doing this exercise right, asking what comes next, what this means, whether I'm learning fast enough." A tear slipped down her cheek. "Even now, even here in this beautiful place, I can't stop. I can't just be." Toen nodded, as if this was exactly what he expected to hear. "Do you curse the clouds for passing?" he asked. "No. Do you chase them away, or cling to them when they're beautiful?" "No." "Then why," he asked gently, "do you wrestle your thoughts as if they were enemies?" Aiko didn't answer. She couldn't. He bent down and picked up a stone, smooth and gray, about the size of an apple. He held it out to her. "Hold this." She took it. At first it was easy. Just a stone, just a weight. Minutes passed. The sun climbed higher. Her arm began to ache. A dull throb at first, then sharper. Her muscles trembled. "Master," she said through gritted teeth. "How long must I hold it?" "Until I tell you to stop." More minutes passed. The pain spread from her hand to her wrist, her forearm, her shoulder. Her whole arm shook with effort. Tears streamed down her face, from pain, from frustration, from something deeper she couldn't name. "Please," she whispered. "Now," Toen said quietly, "drop it." She released the stone. It fell away from her, tumbling down into the valley below, disappearing without a sound into the mist. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. She gasped, cradling her arm, feeling the blood rush back, the tension release. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Relieved," she said, laughing through her tears. So relieved. Toen looked at her with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. "Thoughts are like stones," he said. "They are not the problem. Weight is natural, but they only crush you if you insist on carrying them long after you could have let them go." Aiko's breath caught in her throat. "All this time," she whispered, "I thought I had to fix myself. I thought I was broken and needed to be repaired. I thought the pain meant I was doing something wrong." Toen shook his head slowly. "The river does not fix itself," he said. "It simply flows. It moves around rocks, through valleys, over cliffs. It doesn't apologize for its path. It doesn't compare itself to other rivers. It doesn't hate itself for not being an ocean." "It just flows," Aiko said softly. "It just flows." The tears that came then were different. Not from sadness or frustration, but from something ancient and tight loosening inside her chest, like a fist that had been clenched for so long it had forgotten how to open, finally releasing. She wept. Great, shuddering sobs that echoed across the valley. And Toen sat beside her in silence, simply bearing witness, asking nothing of her grief except that it be honest. Weeks passed. Aiko stayed in the village, not as a student seeking teaching, but as a person learning to simply be. She swept floors without seeking enlightenment in the motion of the broom. She fetched water without making it a meditation. She sat quietly without demanding that the quiet produce peace. Some days, peace visited her like an old friend. She would be washing rice or watching clouds and suddenly feel it, a lightness, a sense that everything was exactly as it should be. Some days it didn't come. The old thoughts returned, the comparisons, the fears, the relentless questioning. And she learned to let them pass like weather. She stopped chasing peace, stopped trying to capture it and keep it, stopped hating herself when it left. She learned that emptiness wasn't the same as being empty, that not knowing wasn't the same as being lost, that being enough didn't mean being perfect. It meant being complete, exactly as she was, in that exact moment. One morning, as the first blossoms appeared on the cherry trees, Aiko prepared to leave. She found Toen sitting outside his hut, watching the sunrise. She bowed deeply, not from obligation, but from genuine gratitude. "Master," she said, "I still don't have all the answers." Toen poured her tea, this time stopping before it overflowed, leaving space at the rim. "Neither does life," he said, "yet somehow, mysteriously, it is complete." Aiko accepted the cup. She drank slowly, tasting the bitterness and the warmth. "What if I forget?" she asked. "What if I go back to my old ways? What if I fill myself up again and forget how to be empty?" Toen smiled. "Then you will remember again, and forget again, and remember, this is the path. Not a straight line, but a spiral. You pass the same lessons at different heights." She smiled back. For the first time in years, perhaps in her entire life, not because she felt certain about the future, not because all her questions were answered, not because she had achieved some permanent state of peace, but because she didn't need to, because she had finally learned that enough was not a destination to reach. It was a truth to remember. And she was already there. Aiko walked down the mountain that afternoon as cherry blossoms fell around her like snow. She carried nothing new, no secret teaching, no magic words, no formula for happiness. And somehow she carried everything. The path was the same one she had climbed weeks ago, but she was not the same person walking it. Where before she had climbed with desperate hope, she descended with quiet knowing. Where before she had been running from herself, she was now walking toward life. At the bottom of the mountain, she paused and looked back one final time. The hut was invisible from here, hidden in the mist and trees. But she knew Toen was there, sitting in silence, waiting for the next lost soul to arrive at his door. She bowed once more, to the mountain, to the master, to the journey. Then she turned toward home, not fixed, not perfect, not finally, permanently at peace, but whole, and somehow, finally, enough.